Okay, it's week 16, and I just wanted to point out what you should be working on and thinking about this week. So, your main focus for this week, while yes, the peer review is due by Thursday, get it done. Your main focus for the rest of the semester is revising your own paper. So, in week 16 videos and resources, I'm going to drop this video that I'm recording right now here. And I have also linked the simple research for composition 2, 3, 4, and working with sources, which is really part 5, into week 16. If you have not watched those, then do so. I realize that some of it is a little bit like it's old news, that you're past that. However, some of you, I'm guessing, haven't watched those videos, and I think you could benefit from them. So, watch the videos in week 16 if you haven't already. I have also moved down the 4-part lecture series and the other APA resources as well into week 16. Again, if you have not watched these, do so. Setting up the APA paper is also found here in other APA paper resources. And some of you didn't get your paper set up right, so access that video. This video is focused on the common errors. So I have updated the common errors to reflect the drafts that I have reviewed in the last few days and still have to review. So if you'll click the green action arrow, you can download it. Just going to kind of hit the highlights here. Just make sure your APA formatting is correct. There is no reason for it not to be. I give you a video showing you exactly how to set it up, and there is guidance provided in both of your textbooks. There is no excuse for not getting the APA formatting correct. Make sure your abstract is a true snapshot of the entire paper. This is not your introductory paragraph. So there will be language that repeats from the abstract to the introductory paragraph, but don't jump into your essay thinking you've already presented the introduction. That's why I say write the abstract last. So you should have a full-on essay, then go back and do your abstract if that's what it takes to get it right. Make sure you can include the title above your essay. If you do subheadings, make sure they are set up properly. Remember your audience. Your audience is an educated one, so there's no need to define like the most common words. Somebody was trying to define counterproductive. We know what counterproductive is, so don't define words that are common. However, you will need to define words that are specific to your subject. For instance, one paper was about assisted dying, so the student defined assisted dying and relayed all of the other terms that are used in addition to assisted dying, but then she also presented the fact that assisted dying would be the terms that she would use for the whole paper. That's great, and you should do that. Speaking of audience, you need to make sure that you maintain a consistent third-person point of view. There is no first-person point of view, and there should not be no second-person point of view. So, first person, I, me, our, us, get rid of it. Even if you're talking about the U.S. and you're considering yourself a U.S. citizen, no, it is still third person. Also, second person, it's not about just getting rid of YOU. It's about the language you're using. So those of you who are slipping in and saying, imagine blah, blah, blah. Well, when you are speaking to an audience like that and telling them directly what to do, that's second person point of view. So you need to revise. Make sure you get your references page set up correctly. Again, you have plenty of examples of information on how to do this. I show you here a little correction. Remember, the one weird thing about APA is that in citations only, they have weird capitalization rules of titles. They don't capitalize most words, okay? So here's just a little example of one that's been corrected for you. And if I highlighted words in your titles of your references page, which I have for anybody that needed it, it's probably because you've capitalized words that aren't supposed to be capitalized. All right, so most of you are okay on this point here, but some of you still aren't. You have to have a thesis, which means you have to have an argument. You are presenting a subject plus your position or opinion, and then your paper proves that for your audience with your evidence. So it has to be an argument. You have to have an obvious thesis. it's best if it appears as the last sentence of the introduction paragraph. I want you to think seriously about your organization. Some of you I have offered suggested outlines. Your organization should make sense, like it should flow, and it should be the best way that will convince the reader to take your position. Okay, so remember, no extra spaces between paragraphs, and if you'll set your paper up properly, you shouldn't have to worry about that. And then, I don't know how much you guys, when you take your word processing classes, how much you are reminded of this, but at the bottom of any page, you should have at least 2 full lines. So you won't start a paragraph at the bottom if all you can get is 1 line. You certainly won't put just a paragraph heading at the bottom if that's all you can get. So if that's the case, hit enter, get it to the next page. Okay. Your number 1 way to cite is with author. If there is no author, then you use a shortened version of the article title. And that's it. We don't use newspaper titles in our citations within the essay. We don't use websites. Now, it is okay if you say something like this. In a New York Times article, John Smith, da-da-da-da-da. Well, okay, that's fine. But the citation's not the New York Times there, it's John Smith, okay. If you don't have an author, though, you do have to use a shortened version of the article title, and you when you do it in the parentheses, the parenthetical citation. And so you also have to put quotation marks around it. So I'm just showing you a correction here. If the reference is this, lethal injection is not humane, E171, whatever that is. We're going to take just a shortened version. Take those first 2, give it normal capitalization, but put quotation marks around it. And notice that the comma goes inside the quotation marks there. Still have the year. I don't say this in this list, but the year will never stand alone. It's either going to have author year or article title year. It will not just be year by itself in parentheses. Okay. Another huge problem is this. You need to use your own words as much as possible. So this means limiting quotes. You should only quote when you can't do the material justice by paraphrasing. If a quote's so great, you just have to get it in there, okay? So paraphrasing is best, but guess what? You still have to cite your sources. Unless you were there conducting the research or witnessing the events yourself, you have to cite the source, even when you paraphrase. So make sure you get that right. Remember that while this is a research-based argument, there should still be like standard paragraph construction. You start out with a general topic sentence. Those should be in your words. And then you have information that supports that topic sentence. And that's where you have a mix of your words and the research material. And your paragraph should be no more than a half a page in length, because when they get too long, they're too big, okay? And people don't read them and people get lost. So, half page. If it's longer than that, look for a natural break. It is okay to carry 1 point across 2 or 3 paragraphs. That's fine. Just make sure your paragraphs are structured still. When you are using source material, use signal phrases as much as possible. You don't just drop in quotes. Like, there should be no sentence that starts with a quotation mark. You should set up all quotes. And if you've used a signal phrase where you say the author's name, then there's no need to come back in at the end of the sentence and say the name, because that's double citing. So only cite once. If the quote is more than 40 words long, you need to format it properly. Look at page 446 for how to do that. And in a paper the size of yours, 5 pages, no more than 2 long quotes. Period. Okay. If you want to introduce author's first and last name the first time, great. But do not repeat that first name. We stick with last names in this paper. Okay, some of you are dropping in the article titles into your essay. Sometimes the articles are really meaningful. Sometimes they're just messy, so limit how much you use those. And when you're paraphrasing, the very first sentence that you give the information, cite the source. And then you can carry it for 2 or 3 or 4 more sentences if you're still using the same source, as long as you don't change sources. And then it would be nice if you would come back and close it up with a citation. You don't want to leave your reader confused. Always cite the first time, cite often, not every time, and then certainly cite the last time you use it in that particular section. If you switch up sources, then you will have to go back and forth citing the appropriate source. If you quote a quote that has special as cited, like that, page 456, make sure your evidence actually supports. So we're talking about the whole paper and then even the small paragraphs. Some of you will start a paragraph and you'll have a topic sentence and then maybe another sentence in your own words, and then you will have a quote from the source, and it will have nothing to do really with what you've just said. So all of your sentences in any paragraph have to stick together, and quotes have to support what you're saying. That's the whole point of it. Or when I say quotes, any source material has to support what you're saying. The evidence has to support. Okay, a few last things here. If you do not cite your sources properly, it will be considered plagiarism, and plagiarism earns a 0, and there is no way to make that up. So you want to be very careful that you are citing sources. If there is information that has to come from a source, it couldn't have come just from your own brain or from common knowledge, cite it. Even if you're curious about whether something is common knowledge or not, go ahead and cite it. That way you're very careful. Another thing that you must note from the syllabus is that if you do not revise thoroughly from this rough draft stage to your final draft, it earns a grade of 0. I spend a lot of time reviewing your drafts and giving you help, and I expect you to take advantage of that help. So I expect for you to do what I have suggested in my comments, and if you don't do that, you have not revised thoroughly, then you earn a grade of 0 for the final, and that does not bode well for you in your final grade in this class. As you're working on your papers, refer to that grading criteria and just kind of check yourself. At the end of this document, I have a sample paragraph from a paper, the comments that I made, and then the corrections in light of those comments, just in case you want to see what that looks like, in case you're curious about anything. Okay, I know that sometimes when I'm commenting on your papers, maybe it sounds harsh, and maybe this video sounds even a little harsh. I just want you all to do well. First of all, I think that this is probably the best batch of drafts I've seen in a while. So there you go. You're doing well so far. But you have work to do. Everybody has work to do. The best essays still need work. So you have over a week. Take the time. Don't rush it. Review all of your resources. By the way, I can tell when you download stuff, when you actually look at stuff in the system. So I know the people who are looking at the resources and who aren't. Take advantage of those resources. Anyway, work on it. Do your best. Take your time, and I hope that this week goes well for you all. I'll talk to you soon.